Adventure game. Adventure games are categorized by the style of gameplay, not the story or content. And while technology has given developers new options to explore storytelling in the genre, at a basic level, adventure games haven't evolved much from their text-based origins. In adventure games, players usually interact with their environment and other characters to solve puzzles with clues to progress the story or gameplay. Aside from an occasional minigame, adventure games rarely involve any traditional video game action elements. Thus, the genre isn't very popular with mainstream gamers. Role-playing video game. Probably the second most popular game genre, role-playing games, or RPGs, mostly feature medieval or fantasy settings. This is due mainly to the origin of the genre, which can be traced back to Dungeons & Dragons and other pen-and-paper role-playing games. Still, hardcore role-playing gamers don't discount sci-fi fantasy-themed RPGs like Mass Effect, Fallout, and Final Fantasy, which have helped put unique spins on the genre. Cultural differences have also had a bearing on this genre, as many gamers categorize RPGs as either WRPGs, Western-influenced, or JPRGs, Japanese-influenced. Finally, gamers are often given choices in this genre that influence the final outcome of the game, which means many RPGs have alternate endings. Fighting. A fighting game is a genre of video game that involves combat between two or more characters. Fighting game combat often features mechanics such as blocking, grappling, counterattacking, and chaining attacks together into combos. Simulation video game. Simulation video games are a diverse supercategory of video games, generally designed to closely simulate real-world activities. A simulation game attempts to copy various activities from real life in the form of a game for various purposes, such as training, analysis, prediction, or entertainment. Puzzle. Puzzle video games make up a broad genre of video games that emphasize puzzle solving. The types of puzzles can test problem-solving skills, including logic, pattern recognition, sequence solving, spatial recognition, and word completion. Action. An action game is a video game genre that emphasizes physical challenges, including hand-eye coordination and reaction time. The genre includes a large variety of subgenres such as fighting games, beat-em-ups, shooter games, rhythm games, and platform games. Sports. It is a video game that simulates the practice of sports. Most sports have been recreated with video games, including team sports, track and field, extreme sports, and combat sports. Racing. Racing games are a video game genre in which the player participates in a racing competition. They may be based on anything from real-world racing leagues to fantastical settings. Casual games are intended to be simple, relaxed, and easy to pick up for just a few minutes. These games do not have complex mechanics. In fact, many can be learned in just a few minutes. Mobile devices are the largest market for casual games since they're great for eating up a few minutes of boredom. Sandbox. Sandbox games allow players the freedom to play how they want. While there may be some underlying story elements, there are typically few required story elements. In other words, the games have a non-linear storyline. Oftentimes, sandboxes also have a building mechanic. Platformer. Platformer games get their name from the fact that the game's character interacts with platforms, usually running, jumping, or falling throughout the gameplay. There are many types of platform games. Super Mario Bros. Is probably the best known, and Donkey Kong was one of the earliest. Survival horror. Survival horror is a subgenre of horror games. Although combat can be part of the gameplay, the player is made to feel less in control than in typical action games through limited ammunition or weapons, health, speed, and vision, or through various obstructions of the player's interaction with the game mechanics. Interactive movie. Laserdisc and CD-ROM technology allowed for the introduction of the interactive movie. Interactive movies contain pre-filmed live-action or animation sequences. The adventure is played out typically from a third-person perspective, and the player controls the action during pivotal points in the story, like pushing a joystick right or pressing a button to jump out of the way as a boulder rushes toward them. Real-time 3D. The latest evolution of adventure games is real-time 3D. Instead of pre-rendered scenes, players interact in a real-time 3D video game world. Shenmue and Heavy Rain are good examples of these types of games. Multiplayer online battle arena. This category combines action games, role-playing games, and real-time strategy games. In this subgenre of strategy games, players usually don't build resources such as bases or combat units. Instead, players control a single character in one of two teams, working together to try and destroy the other team's base. They are often aided in the task by the help of computer-controlled units that attack on a set path. Shooter. Shooter video games, or shooters, are a subgenre of action video games where the focus is almost entirely on the defeat of the character's enemies using the weapons given to the player. Survival game. Survival games are a subgenre of action games which are often set in hostile, intense, open-world environments. Players generally start with minimal equipment and are required to survive as long as possible by finding the resources necessary to manage hunger, thirst, disease, and/or mental state. Strategy. Strategy is a major video game genre that emphasizes thinking and planning over direct, instant action in order to achieve victory. The player has to garner and apportion resources, place troops in the right areas, and supply them with the resources needed to maneuver effectively. Incremental game. Incremental games, also known as clicker games, clicking games, or tap games, are video games whose gameplay consists of the player performing simple actions such as clicking on the screen repeatedly. This grinding earns the player in-game currency, which can be used to increase the rate of currency acquisition.